All right, one of the famous and most, how do we say, applied and fulfilled, maybe even not fulfilled exactly, sifim in Shulchan Aruch, that every bacher, most men, are paying attention to and focusing on Purim. You know, Shulchan Aruch is a big book, and certain things manage to grab our attention. But in one place in the Shulchan Aruch it says, Chayev Inush, a person, Chayev Inush, right? Lebasume B'Puria. Anybody heard about this one? Chayev Inush, Lebasume B'Puria. A person is obligated. It uses, I think, maybe a euphemistic language over here. Lebasume means, you know, to be perfumed, right, literally, but it refers to getting drunk, right? On Purim, Ad lo yada, until the person doesn't know, Bein Ar Haman LeBaruch Mordechai, until the person doesn't know the difference between the blessed Mordechai. If I get it wrong, that means I'm already fulfilled it, and and I'm finished already. I don't have to drink on Purim. Bein Baruch Mordechai ve'Ar Haman. Maybe you mentioned before. I heard some Gemachias flowing around, so you probably mentioned already that some say, I didn't figure it out myself. Maybe we could work it out on paper independently. Maybe some other time. Maybe somebody wants to take a look now. That until you can't make the calculation between Baruch Mordechai and Ar Haman, you know, because I think they have the same numerical value. Baruch Mordechai, Ar Haman. So you get so dizzy that you sit down and you can't work out the gematrias, the numerical values properly. So maybe that's what it means. Others say till you close your eyes, you close your eyes, you put your head down, have a little shluf, a little sleep, and then when you sleep. So at that point over there, you know, if Mordechai would walk in or Haman would walk in, you would know the difference because you're asleep. So maybe that's what it means. Some people get really, really serious about it. It means to get so blind drunk. I don't think that's the intention. Maybe it's possible to fulfill it even without wine. You know, let's think about how that's possible. So what does it mean? Ad lo yada, until the person doesn't know between those. If you think about it, it sounds like it's an invitation to get really that drunk. Because you think a person doesn't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Ar Haman. I mean, how drunk would a person have to be to not know the difference between Mordechai? Mordechai was on the Sanhedrin. Mordechai was somebody. I mean, we could take any Rebbe, any tzaddik that we know, that we've heard about, that we've read stories about, that we even think about now, and we amplify it by 1,000 times. That was Mordechai. You know, he was a person that was imbued with nevuah. We can't even imagine what a Mordechai was. He was a Vilna Gaon on steroids. Who knows? You know, with the times the Lubavitcher Rebbe, times the Chazon Ish, times the Ben Ish Chai. We can't even imagine what Mordechai was. A person's supposed to get so drunk he doesn't know the difference between Mordechai and Ahmadinejad, right? Yamach Shemo, and Hitler, Yamach Shemo, or Stalin, or one of these terrible, terrible, gruesome people that are not just famous in the world, but they're infamous for their wickedness. So how drunk would a person have to get that he doesn't know the difference between a Baruch Mordechai? He's looking, and you see this person, immediately you want to kiss their hands and fall at their feet, and between somebody, if you had a knife or a gun on you, you'd want to slaughter him right there in front of you. How drunk would a person have to get? Ad lo yada, until he doesn't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai la'ar Haman. It sounds like an invitation to get really, really blind, sloppy, crazy, lost, drunk, right? And we know that that's not the case. Jew's not supposed to go out of his mind. So what is the requirement of ad lo yada, until drinking, until you don't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Ar Haman? What is expected of us? What is the requirement? So I remember years ago I used to talk to prisoners. For about 8 years we used to go have a prison program on Sunday night, and I don't think they had access to alcohol, right? That was part of although people all over the world are famous for making alcoholic beverages out of anything, right? Potato chips, you name it, if they soak them in a certain way, they can find all kinds of clever ways to make. So we had to come up with a strategy. How do you fulfill this mitzvah of ad lo yada without wine? That became the challenge. How do we get inspired to do it, even if we didn't have any wine with us? How can we get so intoxicated on Purim? And it's possible. And a few of them actually, they felt it, because the day is intoxicating. When we talked about Purim, Purim is a day that Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim. It's an interesting thing the Zohar says, that Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim. Now, if I would come and tell you that, oh, you look just like your son. What do you mean I look like my son? My son looks like me. You're not going to carbon copy look better than the original, right? So Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim. So there's an aspect of Yom Kippur which is inside Purim itself, right? It's a whole science of trying to understand Yom Kippur, where we eating the day before Yom Kippur, and we're fasting on Purim, right? We're fasting on Yom Kippur. And Purim is just the opposite. We're fasting the day before on Tainus Esther, and then we're eating, and we're eating festively on Purim. Right? On Yom Kippur, people go over and they give, and they say, forgive me, forgive me for what I said to you, forgive me if I hurt you, forgive me for this. And on Purim, we're giving gifts, Matanas Lavyonim, Ish L'Rehu. It's just the opposite. One is just the opposite of the other. It's very, very, very beautiful, right? So I remember one of my Rebbes once said, I remember we spoke about it, we came to, he launched me to go to the mikveh. We spoke about it on Tisha B'Av one time. He was the one that launched me. He said, when I started going to the city, I said, Rebbe, how can I maintain my purity? How can I'm leaving the yeshiva, I'm afraid what I'm going to bump into in the world, and I'm going to Manhattan every day. He says, go to the mikveh. I said, I'm not a Hasidic guy. He says, go to the mikveh, right? And I said, okay. So I started going to the mikveh every day. 1-2 times I missed it, and I'm going to tell you that those days were not the same type of days. I didn't feel, I felt I was more vulnerable to get lost in things, On the days that I went to the mikveh, Ein Adoma, I was able to press the reset button. I was able to start my day fresh, like an arrow coming out of a bow. I felt like, wow, there's something great about going to a mikveh. The Rambam waxes poetic, and he speaks about the mikveh. The mikveh is called Mei Das, the waters of knowledge. Right? And the Rambam is very calculated in his words, and he's very measured and speaks scientifically and very halachically in the Yad CHAZAQ. But suddenly he waxes poetic in a few places, and it's called the Mei Das, the water of knowledge. Hasidim say that this water, that if it can turn a non-Jew into a Jew through conversion, right? What can it do to a Jew, right? That's what Hasidim say. I started getting such a benefit out of the mikveh. We went all the way around the year, and it came Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we don't go to the mikveh because of the Chamisha Inuim, the 5 afflictions, and therefore the whole day of Yom Kippur passed by, and I'm sitting there exhausted right before, 10 minutes before we're about to begin the Ilu. We took a 10-minute break in the yeshiva davening. And I went over to this Rebbe, and I said, Rebbe, I feel... of all the days to miss the mikveh, I didn't go to the mikveh today, and I felt like I'm missing something. And I remember he glanced at me, one of those looks that shout. I knew when I asked a good question, I always get those looks from the Rebbes that shouted, like what did I say wrong? And he tells me, Reb Label, he says, if you think you belong in the mikveh today, he says, then you don't understand what the whole day is about. I said, here it was. It was like 10 minutes before the day is almost over. We're Neil, so we got another hour and plus. He said, but I don't spend the whole day. The whole day went by. I'm fasting, and I don't know what the whole day is about. He tells me, you're in the mikveh. You're in the mikveh. You're soaking, you're toveling in Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we know that Purim that Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim, a day which is like Purim. In Purim, we're in that day. We're soaking in wine. We're drinking wine. We're in it. We're intoxicated. We're pickled with wine. So a person doesn't have to even drink wine. There's a requirement, ad lo yada, but there's a possibility in the day to understand that Purim is a day that we're in the wine. We're in the wine. If a person doesn't have access to wine, it's possible for him to get to this point, ad lo yada. But how? What does it mean, ad lo yada? Without wine, even. So a few of these facts were mentioned before, that if you take a look and you see the whole Megillah happening over here. So every little Jewish child, is looking for a costume. He wants to get dressed. The boys, they want to get dressed like Mordechai, right? The girls, ideally, they want to get dressed like Esther, right? So they're beautiful. It's so nice. If we were alive at that time that the Purim story was taking place, not so many people would have been so excited to get dressed up as Mordechai. Mordechai, in a certain way, is a troublemaker, right? The Jewish people come to Mordechai and they say, Rebbe, should we go to a party? We have to ask Das Torah before we do something, Should we go to the party? They went to the Gadol Hador, someone who was from the previous generation, from before destruction. It's 70 years since the destruction almost. And now they come to the point where, they're deep into exile, and Achashverosh thinks that the 70 years have passed and the Jewish people are lost in history. They're lost. And therefore he puts on the, and when he felt that they was always suspicious, waiting for that clock to tick, and when 70 years had passed, and the Nevuah, according to his count, which was a miscount, didn't come through, so he felt that we're safe, and we don't have to worry about the other shoe falling, we don't have to worry about the Jewish people being taken out of exile. And therefore, I can relax now, and I can make a kingdom for myself, and I can consolidate my kingdom. And he makes a party, not just a party to celebrate his political victory. And he moved his station from where it was before to the place of Shushan Habir. It's interesting. The Vilna Gaon says, Ish Yehudi, one of the statements that we say in the Megillah, that everybody says out loud, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan Habir u'shmo Mordechai. There was a person, he was an Ish Yehudi, a Yehudi, and his name was Mordechai, haya b'Shushan Habir, and he was in Shushan Habir. The Vilna Gaon points out, he didn't move to Washington, D.C. to get involved with politics. Politics came to him. He was sitting in Shushan Habir, and this person moved his capital right over there. History wrapped itself around the tzaddik, because that's what the tzaddik. Because why? Kish ein loshen Yehudi el misha kofer b'avodah zorah. The Gemara says that means Yehudi. He's the only one that had clear eyes in the whole world. He's the only one. What does it mean to be ish Yehudi? What does it mean to be kofer, to deny avodah zorah? That means to take a look, to deny idolatry means to take a look at the world with such clear eyes that they understand that everything comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Chavaz Levava says. Nobody can help you and nobody can hurt you unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no independent force in the entire universe. That's it. That's it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's it. There's nothing. What else? What else? What else here? What ingredient, what element, what on the periodic table, which person, which politician, what happening in the world is happening independent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Tell me. What? So Mordechai looks at the world with those clear, with that eye of understanding the actus, the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, without any fractures, without any fissures in his mind. And they go to that person and they ask him, Rebbe, he's making a party. And he's making a party to celebrate, of course, that the Jewish people are lost. And in order to even mock it further, so he dresses up in the garments of the Kohen Gadol, like he's the Kohen Gadol. And he brings out the kelim from the base of Mikdash. Right? Imagine somebody breaks into God forbid, into your parents' house, and then he decides he pushes them out of the house, and he's going to make a party, and he's going to dress up, and he's going to the closet, and he's going to pull out your mother and your father's, and he's going to sit there and say, come on, come to the party. And invite all the children of the family that are kicked out. Come to the party, celebrate the party. Can you go to such a party like that? Can you go to a party like that? So they came to Mordechai, and Mordechai says, don't go to the party. No party. No party. How can you go to a party like that? They said, Mordechai, what do you understand about politics? We'll come to you, Rebbe, when the chicken, we understand, maybe, has a little bit of a blood spot, I understand. We didn't know if it was shechted properly, So, we'll let you come and to give the hechsherim, take care of the little stuff, But we understand politics. We got a grasp on global policy. You're not in touch with the world. You don't know what reality is. So they went to the party. And the Chazal say, why did the threat come to the Jewish people? And first they entertained, maybe it was because they went to the party. And then they said, no, not because they went to the party. Because even though they went to the party, because sometimes a person is forced to do something. Maybe it's an onus. I have to go, because if we don't go, then who didn't come to the party? The 127 nations, 127 provinces, everybody signed into the guest book. Where are the Jewish people? How come they didn't sign in? Oh, they're not loyal, So we have to show. Maybe we have to come and sign the guest book. And they're serving kosher food too, because they want to make sure that nobody, everybody has their own spice. They had schug there, they had good stuff. They had nice, they had kosher pizza. They had all the kosher wines with a mavushal. They had everything so that nobody should have an excuse not to come. He said, so we signed the guest book and we went. So that wasn't the reason the Chazal says. It could be that they had to go, and maybe not that Mordechai was wrong. But they went and they were nene from the Suda Vachashverosh. That means they went there and they enjoyed it. So I'll take an extra slice. Can you put a little extra cheese on mine? Oh, what's it? And I'll take and they went there and they had a good time. He said, well, maybe you'll make another one next year. We'll go back. I want to make sure I get my tickets early. I want to get in there. They had a great time by Suda Vachashverosh. Even if a person was forced to go to a place where parents forced out of my house, and then they're going to wear their clothing around, parade around in their clothing, and sit at their seat in the Shabbos table, and say, "Come, I don't want to invite you to the table of the house that I just kicked you out of your house." And maybe you had to go because they got a gun to your head. But you go there and they said smile, and you smile because you want to look friendly for the pictures. But inside it's Tisha B'Av and you're crying. You're broken. But to go there and to be nene from the Suda and to enjoy it. So Mordechai was the one who told him not to go. So he's a bad guy. He doesn't understand. He was a reject. He's from the old country. He's from the old world. What do the rabbis know anyway? And then it comes time that Esther gets recruited into the house of Achashverosh, and he wants to focus in on her welfare, and so he finds himself standing there by the gates of the White House every time, and then Haman, Yamach Shemo, he gets elevated to be the Mishnah LaMelech. He becomes the second to the king. Melech HaAgagi, right? Agagi haunting back. We read the Haftorah in this week's Parsha. In last week's Parsha, we read the Haftorah about Shmuel Hanavi, right? Told Shaul to wipe out Agag, and he didn't, and to wipe out the Amalekians, and he gave a professional courtesy, a pass to Agag, right? For one night. That was enough for him to carry on, and next thing you know, hundreds of years later, you have Haman the Agagi, right? And you have a daughter of Shaul, and that's why Mordechai told her, don't say which land you're coming from, because Vashti was his only claim to real royal legitimacy. She came from royal lineage. She came from Nebuchadnezzar, from Belshazzar, and he was the stable boy, or maybe he was an unstable boy, right? He was Tony parking the car, and he married the boss's daughter. So when he got rid of her, he bumped her off, So he would have been happy to hold on to someone if he knew that Esther came from. So he had one advice: don't tell that where you're coming from, because if he finds out you're coming from royal lineage, so then he'll hold on to you for sure. So let's hope he'll cycle you out and you'll be out of there quickly. That was his local understanding. That was his eitzah that he gave her. But when Haman came to be Mishnah LaMelech, he's now the vice president. He's the second leader in the whole world over 127 provinces. So Mordechai stands out there, and every time Haman bows down, every time Haman comes by, he's asking people, you got to bow down to me. Hungadunga, McCormick, you got to bow down to me. No. They won't bow down to him. Mordechai wouldn't bow down. Everybody else is bowing down. Were you required to bow down? So the Chazal also go through this, maybe you could have, pretended like or maybe you could have avoided him. He could have avoided the whole situation altogether. Haman is coming out, let me just, duck out for a few minutes. But what did he do? He stood there and he waited for him, He threw out his chest, and he purposely and he consciously did not bow down. And because Haman perceived that Mordechai was being disrespectful to him, so what happened as a result? So ended up that Haman ended up creating a threat against the entire Jewish people. He put everybody in mortal danger. So let's go back and see, every little kid wants to get dressed up as Mordechai. Oh, Mordechai the tzaddik, So Mordechai was a tzaddik. But it's like you open up you look at the front page of the Daily News. Don't even bother looking at the front page of the Daily News, right? But you see over there, and they have a picture. They're showing a guy. He's getting the key to the city. You look at the little inscription over there. You see what happened. The beginning, the teaser story over there. This fella, he jumped into the river, right? To the icy river to save a fellow that had, that was flailing around in the waters on the circle line as it was going around, the Statue of Liberty. So this fellow jumped into the icy water and he pulled out another citizen out of the water. You open up the story later on page 3. Don't turn to page 3 in the Daily News, right? And you find over there that he's the same guy who's getting the key to the city from the mayor is the same guy that pushed him into the river. He got us into the problem, then he got it out of the problem, and now he's the big tzaddik, he's the big hero. What big hero? You caused all the problems, Mordechai. You were the troublemaker. You were a troublemaker. First of all, you told us don't go to the party. If we wouldn't have gone, he would have gotten after us anyway. And then you went overhead and you planted yourself in front of Haman over there and you refused to bow down. So you're making problems. You're a problem maker. Look at it. You got us into deep water over here. Look at that. There's this mentality, this apologetic mentality. It's amongst Jews that you find it around today also in certain corners, right? It's called, it's something like the, how do we say, gallows humor. You know what gallows humor is? You have a few Jews that are standing there, and they're in front of a firing squad. And the fellow who's in charge of the firing squad is yelling, ready, aim. And one of the fellows who's about to get shot says, no, he says, you can't do this. He agitates. He says, this is wrong, and it's illegal, and it's immoral, and you haven't got the right, and we didn't do anything wrong, and we're innocent. And the other fellow says, he edges him and says, shh, quiet, you only make them angry, So sometimes, a person, they're in the firing squad over there, so they come back to Mordechai and say, Mordechai, you cause us all the problems over here. You put us into the firing line. So, okay, we have a halacha b'yedua she'esav sonias Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov, right? And the synthesis, the essence of Esav is in Amalek. He's from the seed. Amalek is from the seed. So he has that burning natural hatred that can never be eradicated from his heart. So now we see that Mordechai looks like he's the one that started the problem. Then we go to the flip side, right? And we find out, as the Rav had mentioned before very, very beautifully, he says that the Gemara says that more than all the words of all the prophets, the Gemara says when Haman received the ring from King Achashverosh, and King Achashverosh took the ring, the signet ring, which is the way that he makes the signatures, and that means he's giving a blank check, and he's giving him to make whatever rule he wants, whatever decree. Haman got license, this classic Jew-hating, this person who had such a hatred for the Jewish people. He went and he got permission to create a decree, and he created a decree that the Jewish people, every man, woman, and Jewish child alive should be eradicated. And they had an umbrella over 127 provinces, over the known world. What a giant threat. You have the whole royal family together in one plane, and you've got a missile now that's flying directed at the Jewish people, at the plane that the Jewish people are flying on. What a dangerous situation. And all the Jewish people responded because of that, right? And as the Rebbe had mentioned before, that because of that response, so it turns out that Haman, more than all the words of all the prophets, more than Yirmiyahu and Navi, more than Yecheskel and Navi, more than the Trei Usher, Yonah, and you name it, and Amos, more than all those words, those holy words from the 24 books of Tanakh, which the Gemara says that they were only directed at, and they were only focused on, and they were only aimed to create that Jewish people should do tshuva. That was the whole goal. You go through Tanakh and the Kodesh Baruch Hu says, return to me, return to me, return to me. The Navi says, get back to your people in 1,000 different ways. It's one song that's said in 1,000 different ways. They used to do Rosh Hashanah with Abraham Twersky. And I'm sure Rabbi Dr. Abraham. So at that point he told us, he says, he'd written like some 30 some odd books. He says, I didn't write 30 books. He says, I wrote one book, 30 different ways. Right? I think now it's like 80 books, but it's one book, 80 different ways, all on self-esteem. The Alta from Slobodka, he spoke for 40 years. He says he had one shmooze. That's it, for 40 years, But he said it in different ways. The shmooze was about godless ha'adam. What a piece of work is man, how no other's reason, how infinite in faculty, and how admirable. What a great piece of a human being is a Tselem Elokim. That was his whole speech for 40 years. And all the Nevi'im, they only spoke about one thing, and the whole Tanakh is really focused on one idea, is get back to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Plug back into a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Tshuva, get back. That's the whole thing. And they were ineffectual. They were not able to impact the Jewish people, not able to turn people's hearts. They got people angry. They pushed people away. More than all the shmuzim and all the CHAZAQ and Torah and TorahAnytime.com, more than all the things, a threat from Haman was able to get the Jewish people to do tshuva, and therefore Haman was the greatest machzir tshuva. He was the greatest makarev of Jewish people and Jewish hearts, more than anybody else that ever lived on the planet. He was the most successful outreach program that anybody ever launched in the history of mankind. Isn't that unbelievable? In a perverse way. That doesn't mean he's going to get maftir Yonah for his efforts, on Yom Kippur. Because his intention was just the opposite. So now let's go back and let's figure out, what was Mordechai's gamble? That he put the whole Jewish people at risk by standing and folding his arms and being obstinate in front of Haman? How can he be so reckless with the Jewish people? Okay, we understand, we spoke about his advice, don't go to the party. But that he stood there in front of Haman every day, and Haman passes by, and he doesn't bow down. And because of that, the Jewish people should be vulnerable to a threat from this maniac. How could he do such a thing? Yeah, let's figure out what his gamble was. What was his calculation not to bow? And let's just imagine like this: that if Haman would have been just a regular guy, a politically ambitious fellow that happened to get bumped up to a high position in government, let's say he's ambitious, and he got there. And he's an egomaniac, and he likes people to bow down to him. He wants, like Putin, he wants to win with 100% of the votes, He wants to be, let's fix the election. I want everybody to bow down to me. And I want to be popular. and I want everybody to bow down to me. So if there's one person that doesn't bow down, and there was only one person that didn't bow down and pay homage, so if he was just a political maniac and a political animal, and there was one person that bowed down, then what should he do? Who should he take care of? That one person, that's all. If it's just that Haman happens to be, that kind of a guy that's concerned about, so let him get rid of this one guy. So Mordechai says, the only one I'm putting at risk is me. But I have a different calculation. The other side, what's the other possibility? The other possibility is that he's from the seed of Amalek. And this is a replay of an old play. History is repeating itself over and over again. It will catch up to the present also, right? It's happening right now. Here from Iran, again, who would have thunk it, right? A backward nation like that, suddenly getting their hands on, and threatening and throttling and trying to discipline the whole world from their backward. Who would have thought such a thing is possible like that? And now and now there's Haman, if he's from the seed of Amalek. So the Jewish people have a history from Amalek. And when did we first confront Amalek? When we left Mitzrayim, the sea split. The whole world was trembling. The whole world became convinced that Yesh Elokim, that there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu. The whole world was trembling like this. It's unbelievable. And the Jewish people are on the other side. And they had 10 Makos. And Mitzrayim collapsed. The greatest nation in the whole world. We still look at their pyramids and wonder what a sophisticated culture. And they left an imprint for all time. The hieroglyphics, everything. So we know that it was not a silly nation. Just like Germany was not a silly nation. America is the most powerful country. Let's say, so you can imagine in 10 months it collapsed. So it was dust. And then Amalek should come and attack the Jewish people at that point. When did they come to attack? Jewish people were without food for a couple of days, without water. Okay, it's not easy. You can't imagine what it means to be a whole nation out in the desert. You burnt your bridges behind you, and now you don't know where the food is going to come from. And there was grumbling. And the Torah records that they're grumbling. They said, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayin. Is Hashem with us? Hashem's not with us. That's questioning, is there Hashem or there not Hashem? But is Hashem really with us? Is He in this world or is He not with us in this world? Did He abandon us or did He not abandon us? And then the next pasuk it says, V'yavo Amalek, and Amalek came. And Rashi over there says, here's a mashal. Mashal l'maha davar domeh. And he says there's a father that's walking with his son on his shoulders. And the child says to the father, Abba, can you get me some of this? He says, yes, my little boy. And he gives him one. They're walking in the marketplace. Abba, can I have some of those? Yes, you can have some of those. Those are ripe. Those are good for you. Can I have some of those? Yes, I'll pick one of those for you too. Whatever you want. Walking through the store. And he's feeding his son who's on his shoulder. And at one point the kid waxes philosophical and he says, Abba, do you exist? I'm carrying you around on my shoulders. I'm giving you whatever you need. I'm taking care of your needs. Whatever you ask me, I'm feeding you. And now, chutzpah, you look at me and say, do I exist? I says, you're riding on me. I'm not riding on you. Am I a thought in your mind? I'm carrying you. But the father doesn't explain to him with words. He demonstrates to him. He puts the child down off of his shoulders. He plants him onto the ground. And the father steps back a short distance. And then what happens is, some wild dogs are running through the marketplace. And they see this little child. And they start to make a mad dash. And they're barking with their sharp knife-like teeth. And they're running towards this kid. And all of a sudden the kid makes a beeline. He shoots right towards his father. He starts running back to his father. Abba, save me. Do I exist? Sometimes I meet a college student who tells me, Rabbi, do I exist? And what my answer to them always is? He says, let me hold on to your wallet until you figure out the answer to the question. Oh, no. There you go. You people, the only thing you know. So does Hashem exist? Abba, do you exist? It's a practical question. It's not a philosophical question. It's a practical question. You know what the practical answer is? Let's see, when you're in danger, what's going to happen? You're going to come running back to me. You're going to run back to my heart. You're not going to sit there and have the luxury to think philosophically about these things. You're going to go shooting back and you're going to go, Abba! And you're going to find your Abba right away. That's what's going to happen. You're not going to sit there and play little psychological games and little philosophical games. And he says, and that was the history of Amalek. When did Amalek come? When the Jewish people were in a state of doubt. Right? It's interesting. We have the numerical value of the word Amalek, right, is 240. Same numerical value as the word Safek, which means the doubt. That Amalek is growing on the doubts of Klal Yisrael, the doubts of the Jewish people. To the extent that we're in doubt, that's the extent that they grow. It's like the these old science fiction movies where you have the monster that swallowed Chicago, something like that, So, the more fearful people are, the more he grows on the fear. The more fearful people are, they think that there's some other independent force in the world, so the more they take on power, and the more they're able to control, and the more they're able to assert themselves. Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, were in a state that even Haman had said that the Yeshno Am Echad, Mufuzir, Mefarid, Bein Ha'amim were spread out, and we're lost. They went to the party. Why? Because we're afraid. We don't know. Maybe we have to hedge our bet. Maybe Achashverosh is right. Maybe Yesh Od Milvado. Maybe there's something other than the Kadosh Baruch Hu. How about that? That's the shtickle of Avodah Zorah. Maybe they are bowing down and they're showing obeisance to because there's independent politics in the world that somehow independent of a Kadosh Baruch Hu has nothing to do, with Hashem. So maybe that doubt begins to grow a Malek, and now grows a Malek to the extent that you have a Haman that rises up to the top. In Mordechai, we assume, if he was such a great person, that he at least learned Chumash Rashi, right? Even if it wasn't from Rashi. And he knew what Rashi knew. And he knows this dynamic over here, that Vayavo Amalek, that a Malek came when Klal says, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayin, is Hashem with us or not with us? And then he's growing on Safek. So if the Jewish people, their emunah is very low, and they're in a great situation of Safek, of doubt, so that's why Haman is rising up to the top. Don't forget, Esav and Yaakov have this Esau-Seesaw relationship over here, right? When one is up, right, the other one is down. So if a Malek is up, it must mean that our Amunah, the temperature of our Amunah is very, very far down. So now Mordechai makes a very, very simple calculation. If this fellow is a political animal, and he's not happy with me not bowing down to him, so you know what? He'll kill me, I'll put myself at risk. But if my understanding is correct, that this is really a symptom, he's putting there as a symptom that the Jewish people are down low in their emunah, so it must mean that there's another force that's at play over here. And therefore it becomes, and they see that Haman took it that way. Haman then said, it's not enough for me just to knock off this fellow. He comes from the Yehudim, then we have to wipe out every Yehudi, every man, woman. What an overreaction. Because one guy won't bow down, you're going to wipe out all the Yehudim. Why? Because there was an Ish Yehudi. He was the only one that had the full potential, the full belief over here. But Haman understood that it was a principled statement that Mordechai is making, that you can't bow down because there's nothing other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's why Haman gets so infuriated when he sees that Mordechai doesn't bow down, because he's showing him that what you have is really nothing. It's nothing. You have nothing. It's like my kid is sitting there and he's winning the Monopoly game and he's piling up the money and he's beating his brothers and sisters in Monopoly, and suddenly the mother comes and says, it's almost dinner time, boys, you got to come down and stop the Monopoly game. Oh, I'm just winning a Monopoly. Suddenly reminds him that I'm just playing a silly little Monopoly game over here, I thought I was king, I thought I was, the boss of the world. And only to find out that when he looks at Mordechai, he's reminded that you're only playing with little toys over here, you're in the sandbox, and it's almost lunchtime. So he does. So every time he sees Mordechai, he's reminded that all this, everything that he has, and he said it himself, is really a kol shava. It's all nothing. Every time I see that Mordechai doesn't bow down, because Mordechai reminds him that you have nothing. You have nothing in this world. They say one of the previous Lubavitch Rebbes, that when he was in prison for sedition, for somehow going against the Russian government, what was his crime? He was sending money to Eretz Yisrael to support the Yishuv Jews who were settling in Eretz Yisrael. That was his crime for going against the government. He was taking money, rubles, and he was collecting, and he was sending in order that people should have bread and food and provisions in Eretz Yisrael. That was his crime. So he was put into jail, and there was a fella who was pistol whipping him. Who was trying to scare him. He was sticking a gun into his face and waving it next to him. And he says, young man, he says, you could put that away, put that toy away. He says, because that only scares somebody who believes in one world and many gods. He says, but I believe in two worlds and one God. He says, so you can't scare me. Okay? Something to be misboning on. So Mordechai is not scared for himself. He says, let's see what's going to happen. If he takes me out, he takes me out. Then he was a political animal. But if he's not, if he's from a Malek, then a Kadosh Baruch Hu had made this whole thing over here in order for something else to happen. And there's a culture clash between two philosophies over here. One philosophy, this Ish Yehudi, the only standing Jew, says that There's nothing other, nobody can help me and nobody that hurts me unless it comes directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's no world without the Jewish people, because it says, Bishvil Yisrael, Shenikra Reshis, Bar Elokim, Esa Shemayim Ve'esaretz. The whole world was created for the Jewish people. Yom HaShishi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, why say HaShishi, right? Early Rashi Chumash over there. That if it wouldn't be HaShishi, the sixth day of Sivan, then there wouldn't be a world. We'll unplug. If there's no date with destiny over there that there's going to be people to receive the Torah, then what do I need a world for? We'll unplug it and we'll start the program again. We'll press the reset button on the whole creation. And along comes a character who says, I'll wipe out every man, woman, and Jewish child of the Jewish people, and we'll see that the world will continue. There's a world, it's a chaotic world. It's a chaos world. It's a world of randomness. It's a world of evolution. We just have clashing molecules and synapses that are firing all over the place, but it's all sound and fury signifying nothing. There's no real implied meaning. And therefore, what does he do? He peel poor. In order to make his point, he doesn't even do it with scientific calculation. He throws a lot. He throws a dice. You know, there's a theory in science. It's a growing paradigm that's called chaos theory. Anybody heard of chaos theory? When I heard about it, first time somebody explained to me, said, do you ever hear about chaos theory? Chaos theory. I was upset. I was dismissed it. Then I was getting onto a plane, and I had a few minutes before boarding, and I went into the little bookshop over there, the Borders bookshop, and I looked around and said, chaos theory. What's this? Let me take a look and see. I'm ready to punch the book out, and I'm flipping through the pages. I start to read. I end up paying for the book. I bought it. I have it on my shelf at home. I read it through cover to cover. Whoa! It's a shayna, it's an unbelievable concept over here. It's not that everything is chaotic, just the opposite. That even things that look chaotic are organized. It's an unbelievable idea. Even things that look chaotic are organized. That means if you put a smoldering cigarette on an ashtray and you're watching the smoke go up, the way it dissipates into the room happens in an orderly fashion, right? The destruction of something, the way something decays, it happens in an orderly fashion. It doesn't happen, there's nothing random. Things that look random. There was some great artist, famous artist, Jackson Pollock, right? Made millions of dollars, on something, on an art principle, the same art principle called Dadaism. He used to take his lunch and throw it at the canvas, and now it's hanging in the Modern Museum of Modern Art. Look what he did. He understood intuitively that nothing is random. So even if I'm going to take my lunch and then walk my dog on the canvas, the two of them together, they'll make a beautiful art painting, because everything is. This is a beautiful painting right here. Everything. We didn't pose for this picture, but look at this picture. It's a beautiful picture. Everything is beautiful. And therefore, things that look like they're random and crazy, there's no such thing that's random. And therefore, I saw in this one article, this fellow his name is Mandelbaum. This one scientist, one of the proponents of this chaos theory. And he quotes Einstein, right, the famous Jewish scientist, the iconic Jewish scientist, who says God doesn't play dice with the universe. He came to recognize that. God doesn't play dice with the universe. And this fellow Mandelbaum says, I disagree with it. It's not true. He says God does play dice with the universe. He says, but the dice are loaded. Right? Which helps explain the question that the Sfas Emes asks. He says, how come Purim is called Purim? Let's get this point over here. It's unbelievable. Why is Purim called Purim? It says, Ki hipil por, Haman threw a por, right? He threw one little block that had enough sides on it, he could figure out which day was going to be the most vulnerable day for the Jewish people based upon a random throw, a roll of the die. A roll of the dice. What's a singular? Die? Die is two, dice is... Okay, what? Which is one? Die? Die, okay, good, die. So he threw one die. Thank you, Diana. He threw one die. And with that one piece, with that one thing that he threw, so he figured out that Moshe Rabbeinu's yurtzeit, that was the day Moshe Rabbeinu died. The Jewish people are vulnerable. Moshe Rabbeinu lived 120 years to completion. He was born on that same day. Also, was the day we got Moshe Rabbeinu. So he didn't know Jewish people are vulnerable. Jewish people are strong, made strong on the day. Yadav Shel Moshe Emunah, the Moshe Rabbeinu is the leader of the Jewish people. We got Moshe Rabbeinu on that day. So good. So he says, how come it's called Purim? Ki hipil por. He threw one. So the Sfas Emes explains, you're right, God doesn't play dice with the universe. He does play dice with the universe, but the dice are loaded. Because there's one lot that he's throwing, but a Kodesh Baruch Hu, the fix is in. The Kodesh Baruch Hu has a counterbalance in the universe. There's another lottery that makes sure that whatever is going to happen is going to come out in favor of the Jewish people. Because Bishvil Yisrael, Shenikra Reshis, Bar Elokim Eser Shemayim Ve'aretz. Bishvil Torah, Shenikra Reshis, Bar Elokim Eser Shemayim Ve'aretz. The world was created for Torah. The world was created for the Jewish people. And therefore, Haman was wrong. And Mordechai understood with clarity, he is wrong as wrong as wrong as wrong can be. If he's going to wipe out every man, woman, and Jewish people in the world, Kadosh Baruch Hu is not going to let it happen. And that's what happened. He went from going after Mordechai, he's going to wipe out all the Jewish people. Why should you want to do such a thing like that? Because he wants to prove his point that the world is a random world. And Mordechai understands with clarity, it ain't so, it's not true. And therefore what happened was, when Jewish people heard the news, so Esther said, let's fast for 3 days, let's make it happen. The whole Jewish people fasted on Pesach, the first 3 days of Pesach. And they all came back, v'yikhalu, and they gathered together, v'yitzak, when they cried out, and there was tears, and the people cried out, and therefore Haman ended up gathering the Jewish people. Perversely, he was the one that was trying to derail the Kadosh Baruch Hu's plan, and to prove that the Jewish people have no kiyum in the world, and the world can stay without the Jewish people. And he ended up furthering the cause of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's plan. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. There's a kol poyel Hashem lamanehu. Everything Hashem does, He does for His own good. Afilu rasha liyom rishaso. Even the wicked person on the day of his wickedness. It doesn't work out. A Kadosh Baruch Hu's plan worked out, not Haman's plan. So what comes out of this whole story over here is that we see that Mordechai looked like he was the bad guy for a while. There's a nahafachu over there also. He also redeemed his reputation. It turns out that he was right, because when he came out from Esther and he says, now I want you to fast. Now we're in danger, now you got to listen to me. He said, okay, in danger we're going to listen to you. And they listened to him. And it turned out that he was right. He was right originally, but it took them years to figure out how right he was originally. And for them to gain the appreciation that Mordechai was not the bad guy, he also, his reputation was redeemed. And Haman, right? So he turned out that he ended up doing something good for the Jewish people. So like we said before, the Rebbe mentioned before, David HaMelech says, Shivtecha mishantecha heme yanachamuni, right? That the two things give me comfort, right? David HaMelech says, right? His Hashem Roi, I have a shepherd, is my Hashem. And I know he's got two hands. One hand is the Shivtecha, like the Shevet Musar. Like I said, that's how another way to control the sheep is with a stick. He's got a bat. That's one end of that little crook stick, and the other one has that little crook to it. That's used for pulling the sheep gently along. For bakar b'yamin, v'daycha b'smal. You draw close with the right, you push away with the left. He has two parts to it. And David says you got the right hand, you have chesed, you have gevurah. I know Kadosh Baruch Hu is dealing with Hashem Roi. I can intelligently understand that both things are coming from one face. There's one, that's my owner, and he's got one way of dealing with me, he's got another way of dealing with me, both of them comfort me. That's what David HaMelech was able to perceive. He says, Be'ich b'de Mashiach, in the times of Mashiach. So it says, Penei hador ke penei hakelef. If you take a dog, and you want to discipline him, to take the newspaper to give him a clap, because he did something, he done the wrong, he did something he should have waited, he scratched the furniture, so they come to give the dog a clap, and the dog's biting the newspaper, he's looking at the newspaper, he's blaming the newspaper, he's blaming the hand that's giving him the whack, that's disciplining him and telling him out, and he doesn't realize that you follow up to the head and you follow down the other side, and you realize that there's a hand over there that's been feeding him all this time and taking him. So there's a sort of a break, and so therefore, what the Jewish people came to understand, this means ad lo yada, until we don't understand. Until we're not looking at what's good and what's bad. If we look at the newspaper today, oh, what's good? Oh, what's bad? Oh, what's good? What's bad? We get a overview of everything. We realize that everything that Kadosh Baruch Hu is doing, kol poyel Hashem lamanehu afilu rasha liyom rishaso. Everything that's happening is for good. I'm not here to judge a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You see that Mordechai, even at the end, after having saved the Jewish people, it was barov echav. It was a majority. He had a 51% approval rating. What's a Kadosh Baruch Hu's approval rating in the world today? People sitting in judgment. If I was a God, I would do it differently. I would do. Something on Purim. We let go and realize that Kadosh Baruch Hu, after reading the Megillah twice, after connecting and feeding and taking care of all the Jewish people, Mishloach Manas, repairing relationships, broken relationships, say, let me get in touch with this one, let me connect with this one, let me take care of poor people to make sure, I may not be rich myself, but listen, how can I sit and enjoy a Suda if I know that there's people, who need Tomchei Shabbos, who need some help, and let me give some Matanas Levyonim. So I feel connected with people all around me, the whole Jewish people. You look around, you calculate how much Mishloach Manas, how much tzedakah goes all over the place. It's like beans in a chont, and potatoes, and and all the different little pieces. They all come in separately. But by the end, by the time Shabbos, by the time Purim is in full bloom, so you look into the chont pot, And that little piece of garlic was in there, has something in every bean. And every bean has something in the garlic and every other bean. We all have something. We've all shared electron. We've all become one. We became unified through the process. And with that comfort that we're a part of the Jewish people. Reb Miller said that when it says, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Le'olam Haba, which is a mission in Sanhedrin, which is at the top in the introduction to every mission in Perkei Avos. So he says it should have said Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chalakim Olam Haba. I'm sorry, we all have chalakim, portions. You have your portion, right? But we all have portions. He says no. He says Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Olam Haba. He says it's only if a person is a part of Kol Yisrael. We want to be a part of the Jewish people. We want to be a part of the historic Jewish people. So sometimes we're working so close to the painting. We're so, it's good, it's a good day, it's a bad day, it's a good teacher, it's a bad teacher, it's a good mother, it's a bad mother, it's a good father, it's a bad father. It's good. He was good today, he was bad today. Kodesh Baruch Hu was good today, Kodesh Baruch Hu was bad today. It was a good politician, it's a bad politician. It's good, So we're sitting there, we're putting, good and bad, good and bad, good and bad. The Eitz Atas, Tov Ra. We have a confusion of Tov Ra. But there's an Eitz Chaim from a perspective, from 50 Amos high, a person can gain a perspective and understand that Kol Ma'da Avad Rahman Latav Avda, everything Kodesh Baruch Hu does ultimately is for the good. So let's not worry, and let's not make ourselves sick with worry. Kodesh Baruch Hu is putting on a big Purim spiel that's going on right now. I called one of my Rebbeim the other night. I'm sending my daughter to Eretz Israel next year, Mi'at Hashem. And that means that to go to seminary, we have to put down a $3,000 non-refundable deposit, So as we're about to write the check and everything, so my wife says, I just heard recently on the news that it's pretty dangerous out there. There might be a need for Israel to do something and to take a military response, to America's, efforts, and so what are we going to do? She says, is it safe? Is it going to happen? He says, it's a little bit of a silly question. We're worried about a $3,000 non-refundable deposit, and yet, the life in the nefashos of Klal Yisrael, we have 6 million Jews in Eretz Israel. What's going to be? So I called up one of my Rebbeim, who's an Adam Gadol. It's an unfinished story, by the way. And I asked him, what should we do, Rebbe? And he's somebody who mamish knows the entire Talmud, everything backwards, forwards, down to the bottom, everything. Someone who's like beyond, And he says to me, he hears a mother's concern over here. He hears a financial concern, and he says, whatever's going to affect over there is going to affect over here also. It's not just, they're here. And I said, understand, Rebbe. And he says, I think we have to ask Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, anybody remember from the first Gulf War? Remember the first Gulf War? The first Gulf War. When did the first Gulf War end? Anybody remember? Tainus Esther. They came to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and they asked him, Rebbe, what should we do? Should we shave off our beards in order to wear gas masks? The gas masks. Because the gas masks only work if it's pressed against the skin. That suction, you need that. And should we shave off our beards? He was sitting on his porch near Tel Aviv in Bnei Brak, and that's where most of the Scud missiles were aimed, to try to hit a gas pipe over there to disable somehow the gas line supply in Eretz Israel, to cripple the economy and everything. So they had their reasons that was going to cause the most damage. That was their the air pipe, the wind pipe, that they were going for. So he said, he wasn't sitting on Ocean Parkway someplace. He was sitting there in the line of fire. With his Gemara open, he says, on Purim you'll wear your masks. That's what he told people. On Purim you'll wear masks. Now this is an inyan of Pikuach Nefesh. Pikuach Nefesh is doicha kol haTorah kula. That means that a person in the middle of Shabbos, runs out and picks up the phone if he has to do something. You call a cab. You do what you have to do. You call Hatzalah when it comes to saving a life. Here we're talking about saving life. Versus a beard, a beard. It's a custom to have a beard. It's nice. You have to be careful how you shave it. You don't, create 5 different averas by the way you cut it. The person has to be careful with what type of shaver, but it's okay to have a beard, not to have a beard. Moshe Sher, who headed Agudas Yisrael for 50 years, didn't have a beard. He had a mustache. Okay, they said the Ramchal, I heard, didn't have a beard. The Gemara, it says that Rabbi Yochanan didn't have a beard for whatever reason. He didn't have. I don't know if he shaved it. He didn't have a beard. A person can get into Olam Haba without a beard. My wife doesn't have a beard, right? Women don't have beards. Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Le'olam Haba, right? So you can get into the next world without a beard. And he says, on Purim you wear your masks. Look at it. So everybody remembers the war, that there was this tremendous armament, the Air Force that was hitting from England and France and America, the Allied forces, boom, 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 pounding this Shmendrik, what's his name, Saddam Hussein. And every day he would get up, and make an announcement. like a New York City cockroach, you know. That's it. You step on him, he says, "Try me again. You didn't hit me hard enough," you know. Chutzpah, you know. And he'd say, "You can't get me." He looked like he was indestructible. And everybody's like, "What's going to take? What's it going to take? What's it going to take?" So they carried 4 days before Purim. They started. It's called Desert Storm. Bum, 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 bum. You have a couple of guys who were playing basketball in the Bronx 6 months earlier, you know, and now they're crawling on their bellies in the desert over there. What's that going to do? And then suddenly this guy says, "Uncle," that's it. He gives up, and the people can dismantle their Cheder Chatum. They can dismantle their sealed rooms, and you don't have to worry about the bombs. He gave up, and he agreed to an armistice or whatever the terms were. Until later on, he needed to get knocked out. So it was Tainus Esther. And people, you know, didn't have a chance because they were stuck in their rooms and not knowing when the bomb was going to fall. They didn't let their kids go to Cheder, and they had the Cheder in the bomb shelters, and they didn't have a chance to go out and buy their Mordechai and Esther costumes or anything like that. And therefore, when the time said it was over and you're okay and you can leave your rooms and you can go out, so that night was Purim, and people went out and they heard the Megillah. And guess what? The most popular costume that people were wearing, dancing in the streets, was the gas masks. Because it says on Purim you'll wear your masks. That's what he said. It's not such a publicized thing, but that's what he said. Who would have guessed that on Purim people would be wearing their masks? But there's a mask on Purim. Kodesh Baruch Hu is hidden. We're not hidden. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is hidden from our eyes. The depth of who we are is hidden from our eyes. So my Rebbe says, that was 19 plus years ago. Forget. He says we'll have to ask Reb Chaim Kanievsky. I told him he hasn't been answering my phone calls lately. You know, he says, I have somebody who goes in, I'm going to give him a call tonight. I didn't get my answer back yet. But before we hung up, my Rebbe said, he said, call me back tonight and remind him. I called him back that night and he reminded, I'm waiting for the answer yet. That was just the other day, right before Shabbos. And my Rebbe says, and I can hear him breathing in the background before we hang up, he says, I have a feeling. He says, when does school start? I said, August, September. I think I didn't look at the papers yet. He says, we'll probably all be there by then. He says, okay. I'm not saying it's it was an infusion of emunah, because even, let's say, it didn't happen. He's not saying I'm right. He's saying, I'm not saying it's a prediction. He's saying this is somebody who's living like, we're in the birthing room and kol mavaser va'omer, kol mavaser va'omer. We're waiting to hear the good news. Achak elo. We're in a world where the stakes couldn't be higher and the stage couldn't be bigger. Do you understand what the danger is? We're in the same exact place over here. Purim is a time for prayer. We could knock this thing out with prayer. We could knock this thing out with Tilim and Tehillim, It may need bombs, but it needs a Debarta bomb, right? It needs a Rambam. It needs a heart that this thing has to bring us. We're in a Purim spiel over here. And there's a certain calmness in the center of the cyclone. We understand that that's what we're going through. That's the times that we're living in. It's not just something that happened back then. It's Purim. It's Sof Kol Anisim Ladoros. This is the way Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Hanhag of Kodesh Baruch Hu, all throughout the rest of the generations until the end of times. So we find ourselves in this dangerous situation over here, but we can understand also that we're not here to judge this thing and that thing. Ultimately, we can have a confidence after reading the Megillah and connecting with all the Jewish people. If we're going to hunker down and we're going to stay with the Jewish people, we're going to stay together, that everything is going to be great. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to show that they're going to cook in their own juice, and it will have turned out to be a Purim spiel. So that's how a person can get high ad yoda. When a person comes to that recognition, that full bitochon, that everything is okay, then it doesn't matter it's Mordechai, it doesn't matter that it's Haman, it doesn't matter that it's Ahmadinejad, it doesn't matter who wins the election. That means that you don't have to try. Mordechai was trying very hard. But ultimately, there's a part of us which is a trying, and there's a part of us which is able to transcend the whole thing and understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is doing a very good job. He needs 100% approval rating from his people. Now I'm just going to read over here a poem. Right now we'll finish up with this that I wrote a number of years ago in the spirit of sometimes people make mistakes and they do bad things, but they hire a defending lawyer who was able to try to get them off. So I wrote a poem, even though we just finished with Parsha Zachor, and there's a mitzvah of Timcha, Zecher Amalek, to erase the name of Amalek, but I wrote a poem in defense of Haman, okay? And maybe based upon what we just spoke about over here, we can appreciate it, okay? And it goes like this. I might even need my reading glasses for this, okay? In defense of Haman. Please don't be deceived. Haman was a true friend, if the point that's perceived is viewed from the very end. It's not what it seems, all those faded acts, the stuff of dreams and belated facts. But if I didn't know better, I'd say it myself, in the form of a letter in this month, the 12th. A great time was had by young and old, cause of that man so bad with a heart so cold. So he deserves a song after all these years, and what would be wrong if we shed a few tears for old wicked Haman and his triangular hat, with guitar strings a strumming and a baseball bat. Cause he's racist too, racist Goyim Amalek. Despite his racist view, let there be no mistake. A great service was provided, and he deserves a hand. A nation once divided was delivered to their land. By his wicked decree that he aimed at us, we achieved a high degree and a noble status, as a nation of Hashem, to whom we all returned. But from whom did all this stem? And from where was all this learned? From a wicked guy with a serpent's tongue, who told the biggest lie and was hung from the top rung. So he deserves a song after all these years. And what would be wrong if we shed a few tears for old wicked Haman and his triangular hat, with guitar strings a strumming and a baseball bat. For every exception, there is a rule. The slightest deception can be an act so cruel. And who was the worst of them all? The one who was cursed and took the fall. So what's the big deal and what's the crime? It was a Purim spiel with a message sublime. And no one got harmed except that man Haman. And a few got alarmed and some heartbeats were a-drumming. But a great time was had, and it churned out great fun. Because of that man so bad, all our hearts became one. So he deserves a song after all these years. And what would be wrong if we shed some heartfelt tears for old wicked Haman with his triangular hat, with guitar strings a strumming and a baseball bat. Wish everybody a freilichen and a happy Purim. Thank you very much.